Wakil Duta Besar Amerika Serikat di Indonesia. Menyambut datangnya bulan Ramadan, saya mendoakan keberkahan selama sebulan penuh bagi semua yang menjalani. Di saat-saat penuh ketidakpastian dan kecemasan yang sedang berlangsung saat ini, saya terinspirasi oleh berbagai kisah mengenai harapan, kemanusiaan, dan kedermawanan yang tak terhitung yang kita miliki bersama. Semoga bulan ini memperkuat persahabatan kita. Selamat menunaikan ibadah puasa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Ad America TV. Hi, I'm Maya Trainer. I'm one of the guides here at Ad America, and we welcome our audience joining us online. We truly hope that you are doing well and staying safe amidst this outbreak. Well, anyway, for those of you who are first-timers here, hi, welcome to Ad America TV for the first time. Ad America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young generations of Indonesia to learn more about the United States. We have temporarily moved to a solely digital platform, so you can enjoy our program from the comfort of your own home and help flatten the curve of COVID-19. Don't forget to leave your questions in the comment box below, and our panelists will answer them later in the seminar. And today we will be having a session titled World Press Freedom Day, Information as a Public Good. A friendly reminder for all of you, as continuation of our 10th anniversary celebration and holiday season of togetherness, we are inviting you to participate in our giveaway. In this month, we're giving out a treat for feast. So make sure to stay tuned until the end of this event to know how to participate. In the meantime, I will break the ice a little bit with our social media quiz. And our question of the day is, what year was World Press Freedom Day proclaimed? Is it A, 1991, B, 1960, C, 2001, or D, 1993? I will repeat the question one more time, so listen carefully. What year was World Press Freedom Day proclaimed? Is it A, 1991, B, 1960, C, 2001, or D, 1993? Stay tuned till the end of this event to find out if you got the answers right. Before we begin, here's an opening remarks from Ibu Rachel Cook, Counselor for Public Diplomacy, U.S. Embassy, Jakarta.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Maya, for your kind introduction. As the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta, it is my pleasure to welcome you today to this important event and a discussion to celebrate World Press Freedom Day. I'm glad to welcome audience members from around the world, including from Indonesia, the United States, Philippines, Malaysia, and elsewhere. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. Now, yesterday, on May 3rd, we celebrated the 28th anniversary of World Press Freedom Day, which might give you a hint to the answer to Maya's question. This day provides us an opportunity for people all around the world to focus on the fundamental value of press freedom. The 2021 World Press Freedom Day theme is information as a public good, focusing on contemporary issues concerning freedom of expression, access to information, and the public service role of journalism. By keeping the public informed with accountable information, the role of an active, vibrant media is crucial in the development and operation of a democratic society. The United States values press freedom as a key component of democratic governance. And I know you do too. By fostering a free press, citizens are more informed, active, and engaged in political decision-making. A free and independent press is indispensable to an effective democracy. Today's event will give us an opportunity to celebrate our partnerships as large and diverse democracies with a shared value of press freedom. In the discussion today, you will hear from the chairs of journalist associations in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, as well as a US journalism professor, about the information sharing processes and press freedom practices in their countries. They'll also discuss their experiences strengthening journalism as a vital component of information as a public good and in maintaining the principles of press freedom. The United States is strongly committed to supporting press freedom and access to credible information, which are essentials of a democracy. I hope that the discussion today will provide you with an understanding of these two important and inseparable pillars of journalism. So let's learn from the experience of our panelists today and see how we can apply them in our own pursuits, both professionally and personally. So thank you very much to all of our panelists today. I hope everyone enjoys the program. Terima kasih.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Cook, for the opening remarks. And now, without further ado, please welcome our moderator for today, Mbak Agnia Askia, East Asia Data Journalist of BBC World Service.
Thank you, Maya. Hello, welcome journalism students from different universities. I can mention one by one, from Al-Azhar University, Paramadina University, and then Gajah Mada University, my alma mater, and then UPN, Veteran Yogyakarta, UHAMKA, Multimedia Nusantara University, Atmajaya University, Universitas Indonesia, Universitas Serang Raya, Universitas Esa Unggul, Universitas Airlangga, and of course, my fellow journalists, happy World Press Freedom Day, and other audiences from Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and of course, the United States, and especially those at America and American spaces in Batak, in Manila, and Marawi. Welcome, and I'm so glad that I can be here and we can talk across the region and even beyond, because we have an amazing speaker, a professor of journalism from the United States. And without further ado, I will introduce the amazing and young talented speakers from four countries, actually. 3 journalists from Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia, and 1 professor from the US. Okay. First is Mas Sasmito Madrim. Sasmito is the chairperson of the Alliance of Independent Journalists, or IG Indonesia, for the 2021 and 2024 period. He was previously chaired the advocacy team at IG and was active in defending journalists' rights and the freedom of the press. This is important, everybody. He is currently a journalist for VOA Indonesia, and previously he worked for the Media Lintas Inti Nusantara, or as we know, KBR Radio. Okay, and the second speaker, we have Farah Marsita Abdul Patah. She is currently president of the National Union Journalists Malaysia and is the chair of the NUG branch at New Straits Times Press. And Farah is a journalist working at Berita Harian, Malaysia. And she started her career in journalism in 2009, so such a long time, with Malaysia's leading media house, Media Prima. And she graduated from Teesside University with a Master's of Arts degree in multimedia journalism. So she's kind of expert. So we can ask a lot of journalism things to her. Okay, the third speaker will be Mas Jonathan De Santos. Jonathan is the chairperson of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines and has worked as a journalist for more than 12 years. Wow, that's such a long time, of course. And he is news section head at philstar.com in Manila and previously worked for GMA News Online, Coconuts Manila, Yahoo News, Verifiles, and Sunstar. And last but not least, Professor Janet Steele. She is a professor of journalism at George Washington University and the director of the Institute of Public Diplomacy and Global Communication. And she received her PhD in history from the Johns Hopkins University and focuses on how culture is communicated through the mass media. This is such an interesting topic, Prof. And yeah, Dr. Steele is a frequent visitor to Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, of course. I think she keeps coming back here, where she lectures on topics ranging from the role of the press in a democratic society to specialized courses on narrative journalism. Her book, Wars Within, the story of Tempo, an independent magazine in Suharto in Indonesia, focuses on Tempo magazine and its relationship to the politics and also, to the politics and culture of New Order in Indonesia. Awarded two Fulbright teaching and research grants, she has served as a State Department speaker specialist in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Brunei, the Philippines, East Timor, Taiwan, Burma, Sudan, Egypt, India, and Bangladesh. So she knows pretty well about the Asia and, of course, beyond the region. The author of numerous articles on journalism theory and practice, her 2014 book, Email dari Amerika, or Email from America, is a collection of newspaper columns written in Indonesia and originally published in Indonesian newspaper, Surya. So her most recent book is Mediating Islam, Cosmopolitan Journalism in Muslim Southeast Asia. Okay, so without further ado, I will invite Mas Sasmito to talk about his experience as a journalist. Mas Sasmito, through Press Freedom Index, though Press Freedom Index of Indonesia jumped 6 places and got better, but Indonesia hits all-time record in violence against journalists in the past decade, with 84 cases in 2020 and 5 cases, just 5 months, not 5 months, actually 4 months in 2021. How would you interpret this to broader view, and how this would affect both mental and professional works of the journalist? The stage is yours. Thank you.
Okay, Agnia, thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to thank At America for inviting Aji to this discussion. I would like to greet other speaker, Para, Jonathan, Janet. Nice to meet all of you. Happy Press Freedom Day to all journalists, and happy fasting to audience at this discussion. Can I request host to have share my presentation? Okay, next. If we look at Indonesia ranking in the RSF, Reporter Without Border, Indonesia ranking has increased 6 place from last year. Its rank was above other ASEAN countries such as Malaysia, Filipina, and Singapore. Indonesia position is only below Timor-Leste at 71 and Papua New Guinea 47. However, the RSF still puts Indonesia press freedom in a bad condition or red zone because the government is still repressive against journalists with reason of COVID-19 and false information or hoax. Next. First, I want to start this discussion by looking at the regulation in Indonesia. Regulation in Indonesia are actually quite good. We have a press law which guarantees press freedom and work of journalists. In addition, there has been an MOU between the National Police Chief and the Press Council, which states that the news dispute will be resolved ethically at the Press Council, not criminally. However, there are a number of regulations that were a threat to journalists, such as Undang-Undang ITE or Information Transaction and Electronic Law, the Criminal Code, and Omnibus Law. Next, fact on the field are very different from the regulation. Aji note that in the last 10 years, cases of violence have continued to increase. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the highest record was 84 cases. Starting from 2009, 38 cases were recorded, and then 2016 had reached 81 cases, then dropped back and went up in 2020 to 84 cases. And then in terms of area, the most violent case occurred in Jakarta, 17 cases, followed by Malang, 15 cases, Surabaya, 7 cases, Samarinda, 5 cases, Palu, Gorontalo, Lampung, with 4 cases. Next, and then we now look at the type of case of violence. Mostly in the case is in the form of intimidation, and then physical abuse, 17 cases, destruction of tool and or data, 15 cases, and terror threat in 8 cases. Ironically, the police ranked first with 58 cases, followed by unidentified 9 cases, and civilian with 7 cases. Institutions that are supposed to provide protection for citizens are in fact suspect perpetrator of violence against journalists. In the case that occurred in Jakarta, there were 6 journalists who were also detained at Polda Metro Jaya along with the protester, although they were released 2 days later. Aji also note that a number of violence against journalists and media companies will also occur in the digital media, such as the case of a Tempo journalist who experienced a hacking attempt on December 2020 after writing a report on social fund distribution. The account that was hacked are email, social media account, and instant messaging application on their cell phone. And then the site Magdalene.co and Konde.co, two media outlets that routinely voice the right of women and minority group, have also been under digital attack. Magdalene.co received a DDoS attack, an attack by flooding internet network traffic on a server, system, or network, which result in the Magdalene site being down and inaccessible. Also, Konde.co, yeah. Apart from hacking, Aji also highlight doxing case that occurred throughout 2020. Doxing is tracking and expose someone identity, then spreading it to social media for negative purpose. This is like a journalist has experience in fact check for liputan6.com. Some of the case that we highlight most recently, the case of journalist Tempo and Aji member as well, Nur Hadi in Surabaya, East Java, who experienced violence when he asked for confirmation from a source for his investigative coverage. His case is currently being processed at the East Java Police. Again, the alleged perpetrator is also the police. Another case we highlight in this conviction of Banjar hits or kumparan journalists, which have actually been resolved at the press council, but are still being processed by the police at the prosecutor office until finally found guilty by the court. The rest, in case of violence, has made some journalists afraid to write critical news, so that the public is disadvantaged because they do not get the best information from journalists. Next. This does not include the onslaught of hoax that continue to circulate in the community. The Ministry of Communication and Information note that there are at least 100 hoax content circulating on various social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok, which have reached 1,000. Since 2018, AJI have created fact-checking training for journalists and students or academics. Until now, the program has trained around 8,000 participants. During those 2 years, this program has conducted training in more than 58 newsroom. From there, several newsroom then initiated their own fact-checking initiative in their respective media. And AJI have some initiative such as Indonesia League and fact-check training. Next slide. Yeah. AJI, together with several media, have also initiate Indonesia League, which is an initiative to provide space for public informant who wish to share data with mass media editor. And then the information submit must have a relationship with the public interest. The journalist will then carry out journalistic work, including verify the initial information submit through Indonesia League. Some important point in Indonesia League, anonymity. Indonesia League was created to protect the personal information of all public informant. This system is specially designed so that the recipient of the document cannot know who sent the document or data to this site. And then about data security, Indonesia League ensure that the information or data you submit will not be leaked. Our system automatically encrypt all data sent via Indonesia League. And then all information received will be checked by Indonesia League member. The verification process is carried out with the principle of investigative journalism to ensure data accuracy and validation. And the last about the media collaboration, the essence of the process in Indonesia League is media collaboration. By working together, it is hoped that the impact of reporting on a topic will be broader and more comprehensive. And the end goal, your information have draft change for the better. Next. AJI has also helped money fact-checking training for journalists and students. Until today, it has trained around 80,000 participants during those 2 years. This program has conduct training in more than 59 newsrooms. Maybe this material can use to be a trigger for this discussion. Thank you, Agnia.
Thank you, Mas Asmito, for the talk. So I would invite second speaker, Farah. We go to the neighboring country, Malaysia, who falls 80 places in Reporter Without Borders Annual Press Freedom 2021. That's the steepest amongst all the Southeast Asian countries. Why is that happening and how the future holds, Farah?
Hello. Hi. Okay, I'd like to say thank you to America for having me today. It's definitely an honor to be in the presence of brilliant minds. Also, hi and thank you to our virtual readers and at American Corners. So, can you please play my slide? So, these are the situation in Malaysia currently. Next. I'm just going to show you the slide before I start my presentation. So this is the latest crackdown towards journalists. Next. This is the new law introduced, using the emergency powers and the COVID situations. Next. Again, we using our OSA, Official Cigarettes Act, in order to crack down on media press freedom. Next. This happened recently towards one of our media houses, Malaysia Kini. Next. And this is our current ranking, which we actually fall 18 places at 119 from last year to 101's place. So basically, the situation in Malaysia, while I know that compared to Indonesia and Philippines, some say that we are actually fortunate, or we do not have to face violence. There's not imprisonment or death threats towards journalism. But having said that, it doesn't mean that the situation in Malaysia are very much well off compared to our counterparts. In fact, I would say that in Malaysia we have been conditioned to practice self-censorship. And I think as a journalist, the most dangerous forms of media practice is to practice self-censorship, mainly for the fact that we are the group, or we are the people who have been entrusted with information, with educating the public, with bringing out the truth. And yet there's so much fear and repercussion that we decided to play it safe. And I think for press freedom, that is something very sad. And there's a lot of situation that contributed to us self-censoring in Malaysia. I think one of the situation that leads to us self-censoring is media crackdown. Like I've shown you earlier in my slides, and last year alone, we saw like several journalists and media agencies being investigated, harassed, and subject to legal action by the state. So I think in Malaysia, while we do not have violence, death threat, the thing that we fear the most is legal action. And I think legal action is something something that hampers press freedom. I am afraid to write something, or I am afraid to dig out information to the public, which I know that the public should know, for the fear that I will have to face legal action. And when I face legal action, there won't be anybody supporting me behind me, and I will lose my rice bowl. So I think that's one of the the fears that we have. And then we have high profile cases, including a former South China Post correspondent. And then we have the crackdown on Al Jazeera last year, when all Al Jazeera did was basically, showcasing what is actually happening in Malaysia, especially, through the eyes of foreign workers. And, the government decided to slap them with, police raid, OSA, things that basically just hampers our effort in order to educate the public. And not also that, we also have sometimes online harassment by ministers against journalists, who allege misreporting the news. So basically, what we see is, if we read together all these actions, we can see that it's a deliberate and concerted series of action in order to stifle media freedom. And also in Malaysia, what we have is, various repressive and draconian law used against the media and journalists. I mean, in Malaysia, we still have Sedition Act, which is from 1948. They use Section 504, the Penal Code, and we have Official Secrets Act. We have Section 203 of the Penal Code. We have Printing Presses and Publication Act. I can go on for this. And now, with the emergence of COVID, the government decided to introduce, a fake law on news. So basically, not only do we have, legal threats, legal action taken against us, we have these, oppressive laws. And, the trend of the government is basically to target and intimidate the media using these laws, when the government is portrayed in a negative light, But in our perspective, I feel that if we do an expose stories, it's basically not to portray, the government in a negative light. Basically, that is our job and our duty in order to inform the public. So, that's the situation right now in Malaysia. And furthermore, in Malaysia, unlike in Indonesia, they have Day One Pers, but in Malaysia, we still have no media council, which is something that we would really like to push in Malaysia, because right now there is no body, union only handles certain aspects, but a media council basically acts like a protection for media, not just journalists, but even media owners. It works as a protection for that, and that is something that we would actually like, or we have been pushing ever since. And for example, like yesterday during World Press Freedom Day, what we did was we actually sent a memorandum to the government, asking for 6 things. The things that we asked for the government is basically, to guarantee us free and equal access to all media, regardless of affiliation, medium of practices and geographical location. Because currently the practice is in Malaysia, when you have a press conference by the state, what they do is they select only official media, in order to filter the questions, or in order to, not to put them in a hot seat, so that for us, that is, in this, century, that should not be done. You should not be afraid of the media asking you questions, and you should not limit the media, just to portray you in a good light. So that's what we were asking, that we asked that the state must also guarantee that all, that inclusiveness towards all media, not just to the official media organizations. We also asked for the government to drop all investigation and to stop all acts of intimidation and adverse action against the media and representative, of journalists. For example, last week, all this is Astro Awani, and all the news anchor did was, he was being a little bit sarcastic, towards the police. And like I showed in my slide earlier, what happened is that, he was called for an, investigation. He was called to the police to give a statement. So, things like that, simple things, but then again, simple things that, sort of lead to a repercussion to our job. At the same time, we also asked for an immediate moratorium on the use of repressive law, and also for the state to adopt necessary plans without delay and review and amend all these, laws, including, the Communication Act, the Printing Presses, the Sedition Act, the Official Cigarettes Act, because in Communications and Multimedia Act, if you publish something that basically angers the public or angers a certain group, then you basically open yourself to legal action. So. And we also asked for the move ahead of the establishment of Malaysian Media Council as a transparent and also independent regulatory body for the industry. So, like I said, in Malaysia, the situation might not be severe, but then again, it doesn't mean that press freedom is guaranteed. We have to have a media council for us to not be afraid and to not practice self-censorship, and to ensure that press freedom in this country is guaranteed and is being fought for. So,
Farah, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but time is up. But this is very interesting discussion. We can later discuss this on our question and answer session. And thank you so much for your presentation. And I would like to invite third speaker, Jonathan from the Philippines. So, Jonathan, the Philippines record a decrease in press freedom index. And on top of that, 3 journalists were killed last year. And since 2016 up to 2020, at least 170 cases of threats and attack against the press. So how is the situation now under the Duterte regime, and how safe to cover dangerous stories, Jonathan?
Okay. All right. So to answer that question, I'll just share my screen for my short presentation. Thank you. All right. I'll start with a little bit of a little light topic, I suppose, freedom of information in the Philippines. As we know, access to correct and verified information is very important, and for us to understand the world that we're living in and for us to make decisions, right? However, the Philippines doesn't have a freedom of information law. So that means government officials can pretty much decide whether to give you the information or not. More often, that's not. We also have a law which requires government officials, for example, to give to file their wealth declarations. However, the public doesn't have access to this. They are required by law, but to get access to it, you have to request from that government official. And if that government official says, okay, sure, you can look at my wealth declaration, then you can get a copy. Otherwise, you don't. The pandemic has seen a greater need for reliable information, but that has also slowed down the process of requests for information. And press briefings and conferences are held online, which means questions are moderated. The moderator can pick the questions that they'll answer. A lot of difficult questions are left ignored. Also, movement restrictions have made fieldwork more difficult, so it makes us more reliant on official releases. So, for an overview on press freedom, I'd like to. It's actually 223 incidents of threats and attacks since 2016, when President Duterte came into power. There have been 19 journalists killed. 4 journalists were killed last year in relation to their work. Also, if you'll notice, there have been 52 cases of intimidation and 37 cases of libel. Of those cases, 22 happened last year during the pandemic, and 20 cases of libel were filed last year. Aside from libel, the government also introduced a new law which penalizes spreading false information during the pandemic that carries a penalty of 2 months in prison or up to 1 million pesos in fines. At least one radio station is already facing a case for that. What they did was they covered the distribution of financial aid to those affected by the pandemic, and they got comments from people who were waiting in line to get the aid. The mayor of that town didn't like what the people said, so they're facing a case now. In response to those cases and to that case and other cases, NUJP launched the masked media campaign. So basically, it's a fundraising where we sold these face masks, and that money went to a defense fund for journalists to help pay for lawyers, to help them with their legal costs. Aside from libel and false news, there has also been a practice of red tagging of journalists. Basically, the government will label journalists and human rights and human rights workers as propagandists or rebel supporters and rebels. This has led to harassment online, but also this has led to actual arrests. For example, I'll just get my list. In this last year, all right. On April 24, a Northern Dispatch reporter and his companions were harassed by police in a town in northern Philippines and told that people from leftist groups were not welcome there. In June 9, 2020, a veteran journalist in Davao City was arrested and held incommunicado for hours until police admitted that she had been arrested in a case of mistaken identity. One journalist from Manila Today, Lady Ann Salim, was arrested in December, although cases against her have been junked already. She had been accused of having guns and explosives, but the judge said that the police did the search wrong, and the search warrant against her, it had irregularities. However, another journalist, Frenchie Micunta, still remains in detention over similar charges. After she was arrested in February 7, 2020, she had been reporting on human rights issues and land grabbing before she was arrested. And she also reported that she was under surveillance and hadn't received intimidation. So these cases were also beneficiaries of the Legal Defense Fund. Since all the other unions showed their country's World Press Freedom ranking, I'd like to say that, well, we dropped 2 notches to 138th. It's not the best, And among the incidents that Reporters Without Borders used to illustrate the press situation in the Philippines were attacks on ABS-CBN, the biggest broadcast network in the Philippines. They went off the air a year ago tomorrow. And Rappler, a news website, which is also facing a lot of cases. And these were over reports that are critical to the government. The government said maintains that these attacks are not press freedom issues, but are regulatory issues. So basically, ABS-CBN didn't get a franchise, or Rappler violated like business registration. But these attacks have shown a worrying new strategy for government that also could be used against other media outlets, and has caused a chilling effect among journalists. However, these attacks have also prompted more journalists to unite and work together. And I'm sure that despite these attacks, journalists in the Philippines will continue to report as best as they can and as much as they can. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Prof. Janet, I've heard a lot of sad stories, and we can call it like dark horizon of press freedom. And I believe you've been through lots of, let's call it media regime, from dictatorship to, let's say, more open or reform. Would you please tell us about your experience and how would you see the future of this press freedom across the region? Thank you. Prof. Janet?
Sorry. Selamat malam, selamat pagi dari Amerika. Saya sangat senang saya diundang untuk ikut acara ini. I can speak Indonesian, but I'm a lot smarter in English, so I'm going to use English. It's such a pleasure to see all of you, so many old friends, and I'm really honored to have been invited. I'd like to talk a little bit about the situation, not only in the United States, but also how I see press freedom in the region of Southeast Asia, so many countries that I really love. I mean, I think it seems to me that the main question we actually have is, what is the proper role of media in a democracy? You know, to hold public officials accountable, to provide an open forum for debate, a means of providing reliable information so voters can make good political decisions. Well, clearly, I think it's all of these things, right? As you know, the United States itself has faced a lot of media challenges in the last few years. The death of local newspapers has been really a problem. Now there's nobody reporting on local government, and that's a huge loss. Polarization, we all know about this, that it's gotten to the point where the people who watch Fox News have nothing in common with the people who watch CNN, and that's not good. Ratings, and I know this is a problem throughout the region, that it's just easier to have clickbait, right, than to do really hard-hitting investigative reports. President Trump also broke all of the rules. This was a very interesting situation in the United States. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then finally, something all of us face, which is fake news. One thing that journalists had a real problem with in the United States was that, you know, so much of the relations between the government and the press are dependent upon kind of norms, you know, the ways in which we always behave. Well, President Trump broke all the rules. For example, the Washington Post found that he made over 30,000 false or misleading statements during his 4 years. So how do you report on someone who's lying? Well, this is very interesting. And my one solution that I would like to share, I think, with all of you is what American journalists started calling a truth sandwich, where you start with the truth, and then you indicate the lie, and then you return to the truth. Rather than just reporting on the lie and saying why it's wrong, start with the truth, then say the lie, and then return to the truth. And so an example would be, this was one that I read. It's been a few days since Vice President nominee Kamala Harris joined Joe Biden's ticket, and birtherism attacks have begun. A Trump campaign advisor is openly questioning whether Harris is eligible to be on the ticket. Harris was born in the US and is clearly eligible. So that would be starting with the truth, then indicating the lie, and then coming back to the truth. So that was one thing that American journalists did try to do. And I actually think if I have one useful tip for my friends in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, this might be my one tip. So fake news, we all know this is a huge problem. The interesting thing is, whereas all of us understand that fake news is something that is deliberately spread and misleading, a lot of people don't really understand that. And they just think that fake news is poor journalism or propaganda or something that is inaccurate but later fixed, or a story they just don't like. And so I think sometimes we need to keep in mind the importance of educating the public about what fake news really is. Here's a good example from the United States. This was a manipulated photo of Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor of Georgia. As you can see, the real picture is on the left, but then it was manipulated on the right to imply that the Muslim Brotherhood was backing Stacey Abrams. Well, this was not true at all, but it had a big impact. So why are we suddenly so vulnerable to fake news? And I think in all of our countries, we know that partly it's just because news travels so fast, especially across social media. And because there's so much information online, we tend to rely on social cues. I repeat what my friends say. And so once information like this spreads, it's very hard to correct. And then also the platforms, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, they have some responsibility too, but they've been ambivalent about taking action. That's actually something interesting to watch in the United States, how if the Biden administration, there will be more regulation. I mean, we don't know. So what about Southeast Asia? Some thoughts and impressions. My first time living in Indonesia was actually 1997 to 1998. So I was there when the Suharto regime fell. And I was there when I saw the transformation of the press system. One thing that I've observed is that the problems in Southeast Asia, in all of our countries, are interconnected, that there's problems with the law. As Farah said, that the laws in Malaysia just are not good. Corruption, big problem, I think, all over the region. The issues of ownership, who actually owns these publications, popular understanding of press freedom, it's a big problem, journalistic professionalism, and then, of course, disinformation. Indonesia, I think that Indonesia has been a model for the region. I'm so proud of my friends at AJI. I really believe that without the activities of journalists, that Indonesia would never have written and passed that press law, which today still is one of the best laws I know of. I actually wrote an academic history of that press law, and if you Google my name in 1999 press law, you can find it for free on academia.com. The Press Council, again, a model for the region. I went to a conference in Timor-Leste, and there were all my friends from the Indonesian Press Council who are working with Timorese journalists. And I know that my friends from the Press Council have also gone to Malaysia to try to help create a truly independent media council, not one that's run by the government. Yes, this information and transaction law, which Mas Sasmito mentioned, this is terrible. And I know there's discussion about revising it. It hasn't happened yet, and that's such a priority, I think. And then these laws relating to fake news. I think that throughout the region, fake news has been used as a means of trying to stifle the press. And this is really bad. And I think journalists have to fight back. And that's why I'm so honored to be here on the same panel with Kak Farah and Jonathan and Mas Sasmito, because all of you are really, your organizations, that's the key. I love the efforts to fight hoaxes. I look at Check Facta all the time. I looked at Mafindo. These are really great that you can actually look up. Is something true? Is something not true? The problem, of course, is that you and I and probably the people in our audience do check facts, but we really have to encourage everyone to check out rumors. Malaysia, Malaysia just breaks my heart. That I just thought that after the 14th general election, we would really see change. Yes, Farah mentioned all of these laws: the Defamation Act, Communications Multimedia Act, Official Secrets, Sedition, Security Offenses, and now, just recently we've got a new fake news ordinance. It breaks my heart. And yes, Malaysia Kini charged with contempt of court, not for something they published, but for a comment that someone posted, two people posted. Malaysia Kini took it right down. They got charged with contempt of court. This is really dangerous, I think. However, the thing that was to me amazing is that in under 5 hours, Malaysians succeeded in raising 500,000 ringgit to pay the fine. Now that's something. So that shows, I think, the kind of pushback that Jonathan was talking about in the Philippines. And I think on this World Press Freedom Day, we all have to be encouraged. Yes, the reports are dismal and you've all given us terrible reports, but there's pushback. I love the picture Jonathan showed of all of those masks. And yes, Malaysia Kini, less than 5 hours, they raised that much money. However, the bottom line, if you don't change the law, you haven't changed anything. And so I think have to get these laws changed. I hope it will happen. The Philippines, yes, Jonathan did a far better job than I can do of talking about what's going on in the Philippines. Populism, Duterte's threats to journalists, this trolling by critics of independent media, really awful. And impunity, and this is Jonathan's own organization is one of the groups that reported all of these attacks on journalists. Really, really bad. These targets, these respectable news organizations, the ABS-CBN losing its franchise, certainly everything happening with Rappler, just an international scandal. So what is the role of media in a democracy? Well, these are the enduring values. And I think all of us know them. I just think it's important to remind ourselves of how important your work is, that your first obligation is to the truth. You serve the citizens. Verification. This is what separates journalism from just somebody's blog or what they put on their Facebook. And I would say almost the most important, being independent of those you cover, being an independent monitor of power. And then, yes, providing a forum for criticism and compromise, and allowing comments from readers without fearing you're going to lose your license or get a huge fine. Making important issues relevant. This is why I like to teach narrative writing. And I love that Kak Farah was in one of my classes in Malaysia. You can do a brilliant investigation, but unless you've written it well, no one's going to read it. Comprehensive and proportional, and being true to your own conscience. So that's my take on it. I salute all of you. I salute the journalists out there, young people. You're entering what is to me the most noble profession in the world. You are bringing good information to the citizens so they can elect good leaders and hopefully change some of these terrible laws. If you're interested in any of the things I've written, including my book on tempo, you can download them all for free. If you look at, just Google my name and Wars Within, and you can get a copy of the book for free. Anyway, thank you so much. Again, such a tremendous honor. And let me stop sharing.
Thank you, Prof. Janet. That's such a wrap up for the situations in the region. So now we go to question and answer session. I already have one question for Mas Asmito. What do you think of the persecution of journalists under Indonesia's ITE law or information and transaction in electronic? Mas Asmito, I think you are muted. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Sure.
Question?
What do you think of the persecution of journalists under Indonesia's new ITE law?
Yeah, I think ITE law is one of challenges in Indonesia. Aji now menggugat itu apa?
Challenge.
Challenge.
Ya,
Bring this to the court.
Gino bring us to the court pasal 40.
Article 40.
Yeah, and then we collaborate with other civil socialization to bring government and ministry information about perspective in the apa yang lebih berpihak pada kebebasan berpendapat and expression.
Mr. Smito, you can tell in Bahasa, and I would help to translate if that's more convenient for you.
Sorry, Agni.
No problem.
Ya, untuk Undang-Undang ITE, Haji sudah membuat beberapa rekomendasi untuk pemerintah. Itu sudah kami buat dalam bentuk kertas posisi dan kami sudah sampaikan ke pemerintah ya, Menko Polhukam dan kementerian terkait. Itu ada beberapa pasal yang kita rekomendasikan untuk dihapus, terutama pasal 27 ayat A yang biasa dipakai untuk mengkriminalkan kriminalisasi teman-teman jurnalis. Maybe my answer.
Yep. I will try to translate. I'm sorry if there is a mistake on it. So IG Indonesia has given a recommendation to government, especially the Ministry of Politics and Law. So there are articles under ITE law or Information and Electronic Transaction law in Indonesia that should be removed, especially Article 27, who is often used to persecute journalists under the law. And also IG has already challenged the Article 40 to the court. So hopefully, Mas Smito, within short time, we can have replies or answers of those challenges and also recommendation, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mas Smito. And also, I would like to address this question to all the speakers. Maybe I'm going to Farah first. How are the hacking and doxing against journalists and how to deal with the harassment by buzzers or trolls or digital troops, which often make personal attacks on the journalists to undermine their credibility? The same question also go to Jonathan and Prof. Janet. Laura, please.
Sorry. Sorry, Agni, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How are the hacking and doxing against journalists and how to deal with the harassment by buzzers or trolls or digital troops, which often make personal attacks on the journalists to undermine their credibility?
In Malaysia, we do have, trollings, and especially when we do a FB live session where people basically, instead of looking at the news, what they do is just look at your physical and start, bashing and things like that. We have also had a situation where they actually, search our online profiles and our personal informations and start publishing it online. Sadly to say, the only thing that we can do is basically do police report. But other than that, currently, we are sort of like, in the dark. And basically what we do is just we protect ourselves. Union try to help if, let's say, people would like to, our media members would like to get a legal representative, we would help. So that's the only solution that we can offer right now. But in terms of protection or, legal revenue, we do not have that.
But police report, is it promising, Farah?
There is a situation currently, when it comes to police report, there is this we have this view where sometimes it's a little bit if they feel that they want to pick it up, they pick it up. If they feel that it doesn't serve their interest, they don't pick it up. Most of the time, police report is just to protect ourselves. It's not for, we don't think that, actions, something would come along and help us. No, it's just that, it's so that if something were to happen to us, let's say we are, touch wood, murdered or something like that, at least we have that police report saying that, we have, we have this things happening to us. That's all for police report. It's not that we feel that, someone is going to come along and fight for our cases. But having said that, I'm not saying that, that's that is how there is some instances where, the police would come and, help, but it's not very often. That's all.
Thank you, Farah. And Jonathan, I'm sure you've experienced this a lot.
Well, yeah. A lot of the journalists in the Philippines, they do secure their social media accounts. For example, they restrict access to like profile pictures and other. So you just show your basic information, right? Others also have separate profiles for work. Also, I agree with Farah that you do have to report it when you can. If it's really bad, it helps to report it and let your colleagues know. Not exactly not because it will be solved, but just so people know if something happens to you, then this might be the cause of it. It also helps to talk to, if you can go directly to like Facebook or Twitter, just say like I'm being doxxed, or there are these nasty memes about me, and sometimes they do, sometimes they respond. Also, it helps to tell your friends because you can mass report the posts. It helps to put it on a priority with social media networks, I think.
Thank you, Jonathan. Prof. Janet, maybe you can share us your view on the U.S. and also the region.
It's horrible. I think, and women journalists usually, as probably all of you know, get attacked more. And it's a crime. And so I think this is where these interconnected problems come into play. If you have impunity, if the laws are not enforced, or if the legal system is corrupt, well, that makes this all so much worse. I think everything that my friend said is true. To make sure you report it, to make sure your friends know, and also to report it to the platforms. I was thinking about how my friends at Malaysia Kini did a wonderful interactive news feature on the race riots of May 13, 1969, and two of the editors, both women, were attacked. It's terrible. So I think this is also something to publicize this and make sure that, again, it's connected to the importance of journalists informing the public, making sure that the public understands the importance of independent media, that we all benefit. It's not that independent media just benefits journalists, it benefits us all. And so all of us need to support it. And organizations like yours are the ones that can help make sure that ordinary people understand, hey, journalists are working for you. We are serving you, and you need to support us. So yeah, it's really tough.
Thank you, Prof. Janet. Now to Indonesia. I remember I was attacked because of my story. I've written a story of Christian and Muslim community in Papua, and I was attacked and being called as a liberal, even though I'm wearing a veil. So Mas Asmito, how would you or AJI protect journalists, those journalists who are experiencing hacking and doxing and a lot of threats?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is law enforcement in Indonesia. In 2020, we report 7 cases of journalist violence to the police, where the perpetrator were suspected to be a police officer. However, until now, there has been no further process. The case stuck with the police, as in the case of Nur Hadi, although he has moved to the level of investigation, there are no suspect until now, especially if the alleged perpetrator come from the apparatus or the police. This challenge is actually felt by other civil society in Indonesia when they become victim of violence by the authorities. So this needs a bigger push in this case to reform within the national police. Yes, we can push it through lobbying and protest together with other civil society. Maybe my answers.
Thank you, Ms. Asmito. And let's go to the next question, which is, I guess, is very tough, and hopefully the speakers can answer this. Does press freedom have limits? If yes, what are those instances which made you say so? Maybe what are those limits, I guess. So maybe I would like to invite Prof. Janet first.
Boy, that's a difficult question. You know, I wrote a book on journalism and Islam in Muslim Southeast Asia, and I focused mostly on Indonesia and Malaysia. And one thing that I've learned, I don't usually use the term press freedom, because I think when we hear freedom, people sometimes say, well, we don't want freedom like you have in the United States. We don't want pornography. We don't want cartoons of the prophet. And so, suddenly you're arguing about pornography, which is not even relevant. So I talk about independent media. I think the key is media that are independent of those in power. I think media have to be able to monitor power independently. So to me, I very seldom, this is World Press Freedom Day, so we've talked about press freedom, but to me, the thing to emphasize is the importance of independent media that are not controlled by the government, that the government cannot interfere with, and that so that we journalists can report on those in power without fear of sorry, my puppy is being crazy. So yeah, to me, the better way to think about it is don't talk about freedom. Sorry, talk about independence. That's the key. I hope that made sense. Not too distracting here.
Thank you, Prof. Janet. Such a cute puppy. Then we go to Jonathan. Maybe you have your idea of press freedom limits.
Okay, it's something we've thought about a lot. Prof. Janet is right that the use of the term freedom does sort of suggest that we can do whatever we want, but that's not really the case. In the first place, journalists should do no harm. And also our reporting should be in the public interest. So, for example, if a story might be interesting, it might be exciting, but if it doesn't serve a public interest, if there is no reason for the public to know about, for example, the private lives of a private individual, then it's not really our business to write about it. Also, Professor Janet mentioned being a monitor of power. So that's really the job. I think we should focus on holding power to account versus, for example, punching down and making fun of let's say, underprivileged people or portraying them in a certain way. So in the end, we should do no harm and only do stories that are in the public interest.
So public interest is the key. Thank you, Jonathan. Let's go to Farah.
Well, press freedom, I don't believe in absolute freedom, obviously, because, human beings, we do need limitation and things like that. In terms of press, I feel that when reporting, when it comes to women and children, we have to come in play and we have to protect them. Especially involving cases such as incest or rapes or things like that. That's where we have to protect them. We have to make sure that they are not being victimized. So I think that's where that's the limitation of press freedom. And I think we have to be accountable to it. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, Flora. Off you go, Mr. Sasmito, Mas Sasmito. Does press have limits?
Yeah, I think that freedom of the press cannot be limited as long as it is for the benefit of the public. Limitation and restriction has been issued by the press community itself. I think the key is public, the benefit of the public. Gitu mungkin Agnia.
Terima kasih, Mas Sasmito. Okay, another question to directly address to Mas Sasmito. How about collaborating in ASEAN or Southeast Asia to handle violence against journalists, and how to deal with the challenges, stagnation case violence of journalists in Indonesia?
Yeah, Agnia, I think that the condition of press freedom in ASEAN countries are not much different from Indonesia. Unfortunately, the current condition of journalist organization in ASEAN, SIPA, is not very good today. Therefore, I think it is necessary to immediately discuss what collaboration we should do at the regional level. This is because the trend of the violence against journalists in ASEAN is still high. And second, challenges of the law enforcement are still difficult. The bare minimum step we can is working together when there are cases of violent journalists, provide encouragement through letter or social media to relevant state institution so that the case is resolved truthfully. But in the future, the urgent things is to immediately create a strategic institution, maybe like SIPA, to handle case of violence against journalists at the regional level. This include, for example, collaboration in fact-checking or verifying hoax, especially know that the deepfake is engineering video or digital material created by sophisticated artificial intelligence to produce image and sound that look and sound authentic. That's all. Maybe my answers, Agnia.
Thank you, Mas Sasmito. Jonathan, you mentioned that there are plans to get SIPA active again. Do you want to add something on this?
No, we've been trying to get it active. I heard for the past couple of years. So there has been a recent meeting. So we'll see how that goes. But I hope it does happen.
Fingers crossed. Okay. So go to the next question. Did the pandemic deteriorate the press freedom, in your opinion? So let's go to Farah, maybe.
I think the obvious answer to that is yes. COVID is being used as an excuse to basically introduce, various laws. Like I said just now, we have anti fake news laws, and then we have, we use OSA, for against journalists. So basically, it's with COVID, it's quite hard for us actually to get information. In terms, it happens during the first MCO, where we actually questions the figures, and we wanted to know where the figures came from and things like that. And then we were slapped with OSA and things like that, as in these are Official Secrets Act and things like that. And we can't work. It's quite hard for us to work with COVID situation, things like that, because they would say in the interest of national security, in the interest of people, or it's for us to not create havoc or panic. But then again, if we don't inform people, would people know of the situation at hand? So I think sometimes people, the state, not just Malaysia, somewhere else, even other countries, they use COVID as an excuse, to restrict freedoms and to restrict, for us to restrict information.
Despite all the high demand on information, especially of the COVID-19 itself, which is still developing. Okay, thank you, Vara. Is there anyone who would like to jump in from the speakers to answer the same question?
I think I forget who said it. Maybe it was Jonathan, maybe it was Farah, that one of the problems is that because journalists can't meet their sources directly anymore, that if a press conference is moderated, and it's very hard to ask to really hold officials accountable if you can't speak to them directly. And so I think that that's been a big problem throughout the region. And also just I think governments have wanted to kind of cover up sometimes the reality of how bad things are. And we certainly saw that in India, right? That this was a big problem. And so I think authoritarian regimes use opportunities like COVID to further restrict the press. And so this is where I so admire the work that your organizations do to keep reminding the public of this, how absolutely essential it is that you be independent and be able to report accurately on what's going on. So yes, COVID has been terrible for so many reasons, and I think affecting the press too.
That's indeed a challenge to get interview from the sources. So Mas Sasmito or Jonathan, would you like to chip in for the same question?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, Jonathan, please.
All right. Definitely. It's become a convenient reason to not just suppress the press, but also restrict movement, restrict a lot of human activities. There are valid reasons to stay at home or to not converge in groups. But this has been a problem, not just for news gathering, but also for organizing. Organizing to, let's say, pressure the government to provide better testing, for example, or to even just raise your complaints to the government. A lot of it is just on social media, so it's hard.
Thank you, Jonathan. Mas Sasmito, have you go.
Yes, it must have an impact to the work that journalists do and the welfare of journalists, such as cutting weights, contract termination because of COVID-19. Because of that, at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, AJI, together with Journalist Safety Committee and Crisis Disaster Journalists, have created COVID-19 coverage and reporting with safety protocol. This protocol is expected to become a guide for journalists and media companies. This protocol has also been made in video format and distribute to the press community Indonesia. Maybe this my question, my answers.
Thank you, Mas Asmito. Okay, next question. In case of press freedom, there are some people who use it to provoke and make chaos by using or spreading fake news. How the Journalist Alliance will deal with it, and especially in this social media era. So this, I think, goes to the speakers from Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. Jonathan, maybe you can start.
Okay, I'd like to say that spreading false news or spreading false information is not. I don't think that's a good use of press freedom. And since we're a self-regulating profession, the best way to deal with that would be to correct false information from journalists. Like if a journalist writes something that's obviously false, then you can write a report correcting the wrong news. Also, you can message the journalist directly. The person might have a bad source of information, or they might have misunderstood the data, for example. I don't think that people who maliciously spread false information can call themselves journalists.
Good point, Jonathan. Thank you. Farah.
False information. I think that's one of the fear, or one of the, can I say propaganda? I'm not sure, but it's like a propaganda. People say if you have press freedom, then people are free to do whatever they want and put whatever information they want. But I feel that it works both ways. When you have press freedom, what happens is, in an informed society, what happens is when people have the information, they are able to make decision for themselves. What is happening currently is that we are afraid of giving that power to the people, of them making their own decisions. Hence, we restrict this information coming to them. But by restricting information, what happens is there's more false information, because that's what happens. You restrict, and then people start making their own assumptions to the facts. That's the downside of not having press freedom. For me, it's like you have, that's to me lah. Yeah.
Thank you, Farah. So that was the last question. Sorry, we are reaching the end of the session, but I would like to invite each speaker to give a closing statement for less than 1 minute, I hope. And Mas Asmito, maybe you can start. Thank you. Mas Asmito, I think you're muted.
Yeah, few minutes. Yeah, I think there are still some regulation that threaten press freedom, and there are still many cases of violence against journalists and also weak law enforcement. But we must always believe there is a way. We need to continue to lobby, dialogue with the government and all related parties to revise regulation so that they are pro towards press freedom, and case of violence against journalists are truly resolved. Of course, there needs to be pressure, protest on the street, on social media, as an urge to the government to respect press freedom. Of course, this can be done nationally or between journalist organization in ASEAN. At least That is what we can do for press freedom and ensure that information, which is the rights of public, can be conveyed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smito. Prof. Janet, very short and comprehensive closing statement, please.
Short and comprehensive. The lesson that, I was in Indonesia when Suharto was forced to step down, and I saw how quickly the change happened. And I saw how essential journalists were in the struggle for press freedom. I honestly believe that if it were not for Aji, there would not be the 1999 press law. So I think we all have to stay hopeful. We all have to keep the struggle going. I think we need to keep talking to one another because things can change overnight, and you need to be ready, and you need to change the laws, and you need to keep reminding the public that independent media serves everybody, that press freedom is not some beautiful gift for journalists themselves. Independent media serve everyone. And all of you know that, and I know you're doing the work, and I hope that the students out there continue to be optimistic and to work hard, because we all are served by good journalism. And so thank you all for inviting me, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Prof. Janet. Farah, please.
I feel that instead of looking at our differences, what we can do is look at, the common grounds that what, all the regions can do in order to help each other grow better. Maybe I can take from Aji, and I can take from Jonathan, on how, we all can improve each other. I think by doing so, there is hope for press freedom. And I do think that all is not lost. We just have to work together, and I really hope that we are all, able to work together in the future. And with that, I would like to thank At America for having me, and also, being in the presence of you guys really inspires me to push for better press freedom in Malaysia.
Thank you, Farah. Jonathan, last statement, please.
Okay, Farah made a good point. It's easy to lose hope when we think that, for example, we're alone in our country, but knowing that there are others in the region. For example, I have to say that NUJ Malaysia hosted us in 2019. I met Farah there. And that really helped us a lot in organizing in the Philippines. So I think even though there is a pandemic, so it's difficult to travel, we can still work together and organize more. We'll be stronger that way. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you. I'm thanking all the amazing speakers who have discussed all these things, your amazing works as well. So I'm handing over the session to Maya. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mbak Agnia, Bapak Sasmito, Mrs. Farah, Professor Steele, and also Mr. De Santos. That was a very insightful session. We hope to see you again next time. Now, the rest of you, please don't go anywhere, because I have the name of the winner for our social media quiz today. Earlier in this event, I asked you guys, what year was World Press Freedom Day proclaimed? And the correct answer is D, 1993. And our lucky winner for today is Roana Marie Flores from Facebook. Congratulations! As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this event, Ad America is having a very special activities, and we're giving out a treat for a feast. And how do you participate? You can participate by posting a picture of you with your family or friends to your social media. Use the hashtag #MayWe on the caption, and don't forget to tag our social media account at AT America. For further information, you can visit link down below at atam.tv/MayWe. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? Easy. You can go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, click Create an Event, and collaborate with us. All proposals coming to us will be reviewed, and your event might be featured here soon. And while you're on our website, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletters for weekly event updates sent straight to your inbox. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at AT America for event updates, fun content, and so much more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Alright everybody, I think that wraps up this episode. It has been really fun, but unfortunately we have to say goodbye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.